The transport bay doors hissed open and Marcus Chen stumbled forward, shoved hard between the shoulder blades by a guard who'd made the entire journey miserable. The collar around his neck pulsed once, a warning that his human physiology registered as something between nausea and electric shock. Around him, the other conscripts from Earth shuffled into formation, their faces carrying the same hollow expression Marcus had worn for 3 weeks since the Caldrith Empire had arrived at Earth's orbital stations with a simple message: provide soldiers or provide graves. Humans, the recruitment officer had said, her chitinous face impossible to read, are durable. You will serve in auxiliary roles. The hangar stretched before them like a cathedral built for giants, its ceiling lost in shadow despite lights that could have powered a small city. Caldrith soldiers moved through the space with predatory grace, their exoskeletons gleaming like wet obsidian, mandibles clicking in a language Marcus had only begun to understand. They were beautiful and terrifying, evolved on a world with 3 times Earth's gravity where only the strong survived and strength was worshipped like religion. Formation. The word came from Sergeant Vix, a Caldrith veteran whose scarred carapace told stories Marcus didn't want to imagine. You flesh sacks will be assigned your duties. Most of you will clean. Some will serve. A few might survive long enough to return home. Marcus doubted that last part. Names were called in the harsh clicking consonants that passed for Caldrith pronunciation of human sounds. Chen Marcus came 40 minutes in, and Marcus stepped forward, his legs shaking from standing at attention for so long. Vix's compound eyes fixed on him, reflecting his image 100 times over. You are assigned to Beast Tender, 3rd class. Report to Pit 17. Laughter rippled through the Caldrith ranks. A sound like rocks tumbling down a metal chute. Marcus's stomach dropped. Several human conscripts shot him looks of pure pity. Beast Tender wasn't a real position. It was a joke, a death sentence, wrapped in bureaucratic language. The Empire kept war beasts in fighting pits for entertainment, and occasionally for actual combat. The beasts killed their handlers regularly enough that the position had become the Caldrith equivalent of a hazing ritual. They were giving him a monster as a joke. Marcus followed the guide markers through corridors that smelled of ozone and something organic he couldn't identify. The temperature dropped as he descended, and the sounds of the main hangar faded into something worse. Distant roaring, the clang of metal on metal, screams that might have been animal or might have been something else. Pit 17 sat at the end of a long corridor lit by emergency lights that cast everything in shades of red. The gate was solid Durasteel, 20 feet high, with a control panel that Marcus's collar automatically synced with. His hand shook as he pressed the release. The gate rose with a grinding shriek. The creature beyond was enormous. Easily 15 feet at the shoulder, built like someone had crossed a bear with a tank and then added too many limbs. Its hide was scaled armor, dark purple shot through with veins of bioluminescent blue. 6 eyes, arranged in 2 rows, fixed on Marcus with an intelligence that made his bladder clench. The beast's breathing was a furnace sound, hot enough that Marcus felt the temperature change from 30 feet away. A feeding chute hung near the entrance, presumably where the previous handlers had stayed, safely behind barriers while they dropped food into the pit. Marcus noticed the scratches on the walls, claw marks that had gouged into metal designed to withstand ship-to-ship weapons. The beast took a step forward. Marcus froze, every instinct screaming at him to run. But the collar would shock him unconscious if he left his assigned post, and the gate would seal him in anyway. The creature's massive head lowered, nostrils flaring as it scented him. Up close, Marcus could see the details the distance had hidden. Scars crisscrossing the armor plating, several scales cracked or missing entirely, and something else. A harness, wrapped around the beast's torso and forelegs, was damaged. Metal rings had worn through their moorings, causing the straps to dig into the creature's flesh at wrong angles. Every breath the beast took pulled the harness tighter in some places, created pressure sores in others. Marcus had grown up in Detroit, in the old manufacturing district before the automation took over. His father had worked in factories fixing machines that other people had given up on. Everything broken has a reason, his father had said. Find the reason, you find the fix. The beast was in pain. Without thinking, because thinking would have stopped him, Marcus raised his hand slowly, palms out. Easy, he whispered, knowing the creature couldn't understand English but hoping tone would translate. I see it. I see what's wrong. The beast's eyes narrowed, but it didn't attack. Marcus took one step forward, then another. His entire body vibrated with fear, but his hands were steady. That steadiness came from his father, from thousands of hours spent working on engines and hydraulics, learning that machines, and apparently monsters, could sense hesitation. That harness is killing you slowly, isn't it? Marcus kept his voice low and calm. "Let me help." The creature's breath washed over him, hot and smelling of meat and something chemical. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the beast sat back on its haunches and lowered its massive head, bringing the damaged harness within Marcus's reach. Above the pit, in an observation deck Marcus didn't know existed, alarms began to sound. The observation deck erupted into motion. 3 Royal Guard dropped from the ceiling on rappel lines, their weapons trained on the pit below. The youngest, Carix, had her hand on the emergency purge, a button that would flood the pit with neurotoxin gas strong enough to kill a war beast in seconds. A human would die in less. "Hold!" The command came from Guard Captain Thex, her voice carrying the absolute authority that came from serving in the Queen's personal detail for 2 decades. "Do not engage." "Captain, the human has approached the Razorback," Carix protested, her mandibles clicking with stress. "Protocol demands—" "I know the protocol." Thex's forearms remained perfectly still, a statue of controlled violence. "I want to see what happens." Below, the human called Marcus had his hands on the Razorback's harness. The beast, officially designated Combat Unit 73, unofficially called Skravix by the handlers who died trying to manage it, remained motionless. Thex had seen Skravix tear through reinforced barriers, had watched it kill 2 fully armed Kaldrith warriors during a transport incident. The creature's psychological profile marked it as unstable, dangerous, fit only for gladiatorial combat until it could be put down. Yet now it sat like a domesticated hatchling while a fragile human examined its equipment. "He's going to die," Carix whispered. "Possibly." Thex activated her comm. "Connect me to the Royal Workshop. I need Master Artificer Quinn. Immediately." Marcus's fingers worked the harness buckles with more confidence than he felt. The metal was unfamiliar, some Kaldrith alloy that held heat differently than steel, but the principles were the same. Weight distribution, pressure points, mechanical advantage. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Understand what something is meant to do, then understand why it's not doing it. The harness was meant to distribute the force of armor plating across the Razorback's body, allowing the creature to carry additional protection and weapon mounts without restricting movement. But whoever had installed it had used the wrong size mounts, or maybe the beast had grown since the fitting. Either way, every time the Razorback moved, the harness pulled against anchor points that dug into nerve clusters. "No wonder you're angry," Marcus muttered. He found the primary release mechanism, a complex lock that required 3 simultaneous manipulations. It took him 5 minutes of careful work, sweat dripping into his eyes, the beast's breath hot on his neck the entire time. The harness released with a clang that echoed through the pit. The Razorback surged to its feet, and Marcus fell backward, certain he'd made a fatal mistake. The creature rose to its full height, stretched, and then made a sound, a deep thrumming that vibrated through Marcus's chest, not a roar. Almost like purring, if a tank could purr. Then the Razorback bent down, pressed its massive head against Marcus's chest gently enough not to crush him, and exhaled a breath that smelled slightly less terrifying than before. In the observation deck, Carix's weapon lowered. "Ancestors preserve us." "The human fixed the harness," Thex said quietly. "In 10 minutes, he diagnosed and solved a problem that our beast handlers said was unsolvable." She paused. "And he did it without fear suppression drugs, without weapons, without armor. Should we retrieve him?" "Not yet." Thex's mind was already moving through calculations. "Send for the Armorer General. And prepare a security detail. I think we need to introduce this human to someone." The someone in question stood in the royal fitting chamber, 3 levels above the fighting pit, surrounded by servants who carefully avoided meeting her eyes. Queen Sereth was furious, and when the queen was furious, people died. "Explain," she said, her voice diamond hard, "why my ceremonial armor still cannot seal properly." The master armorer, a craftsman who'd served the royal family for 40 years, kept his head bowed. "Your Majesty, the tolerances are extremely precise. The expansion joints were designed for your mother, and your physiology differs slightly. My coronation is in 4 days. 4 days, and you tell me the armor my ancestors wore for 6 generations cannot be modified?" Sereth's claws extended, leaving gouges in the metal table. "Perhaps you need motivation, Your Majesty." Guard Captain Thex entered without announcement, a privilege granted to very few. "I may have a solution. Unless your solution involves you personally hammering metal until it fits, I am not interested." "Better." Thex gestured, and 2 guards escorted Marcus into the chamber. The human looked small in the royal fitting room, surrounded by Kaldrith who could tear him apart without effort. His collar marked him as conscript labor, the lowest rank in the Imperial hierarchy. He stank of fear sweat and beast musk, but his hands, Thex noted, weren't shaking. "Who is this?" Sareth demanded. "A problem solver, Your Majesty. I witnessed him repair a combat harness that 3 certified technicians declared beyond saving. He did it in 10 minutes, with no tools, while a war beast breathed on his neck." Thex let that sink in. He's human. They're builders. Fixers. It's in their nature. Sareth approached Marcus, her height forcing him to crane his neck to meet her eyes. She was magnificent. Armor plates naturally darkened to deep purple black, the royal crest etched into her carapace, forearms that could crush skulls or sign treaties with equal ease. She studied the human like a specimen. "Can you fix armor, little human?" Marcus swallowed. He'd been taught basic Caldrith during the conscription, enough to understand direct questions. "I can try, Your Majesty." "Try," Sareth repeated. She gestured to the ceremonial armor displayed on its stand, a masterwork of ancient craftsmanship, all flowing lines and embedded power systems. "This armor has been in my family for 200 years. It must seal perfectly at all joints. It must allow full range of motion. It must support the weight of the royal cape without compromising balance." Her voice dropped to something dangerous. "If you damage it, I will personally feed you to the war beasts. If you fail to fix it, you will wish I had. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Then begin." Marcus approached the armor with the same careful attention he'd given the Razorback. Every eye in the room tracked his movement. The master armorer looked ready to have a heart attack. Thex remained perfectly still, watching. The armor was beautiful and clearly broken. Marcus could see it in the way the chest plate sat on the stand, slightly cocked to one side. The shoulder joints showed wear patterns that didn't match the rest of the piece, suggesting replacements or modifications. And there, at the lower back, he spotted the problem. Someone had reinforced the lumbar support, probably to account for the increased weight of modern power systems, but they'd changed the angle of the mounting points. "Your mother," Marcus said slowly, not sure if speaking to the Queen directly would get him killed. "Was she taller than you?" Silence fell like a hammer. "Answer her," Thex ordered. Marcus realized his mistake. "Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect. The armor's geometry suggests it was fitted for someone with a longer torso and narrower shoulders. When you wear it, your center of gravity is different, which causes the joints to bind." He pointed without touching. "Here and here. The servos are fighting against your natural movement instead of enhancing it." Sareth's expression was unreadable. "My mother was indeed taller. The armor was adjusted when I inherited it, but the fit was never perfect." She leaned closer. Can you fix it?" "I need to see the joint mechanisms, and I need tools." "Give him tools," Sareth commanded. "Give him whatever he requires." For the next 3 hours, Marcus worked while the Queen watched. The master armorer provided tools and specifications, his initial skepticism gradually transforming into grudging respect. Marcus disassembled the shoulder joints, studied the servo mechanisms, and made careful measurements using instruments he'd never seen before, but whose functions he could intuit. The problem was elegant in its simplicity. The armor's original designers had built-in adjustment ranges, but those ranges assumed all wearers would have similar proportions. Queen Sareth's shoulders were broader than her mother's, which meant the standard adjustment wasn't enough. The servos needed recalibration, and 3 mounting brackets needed to be repositioned. "I can fix this," Marcus said finally, "but I need to move these anchor points. It will leave marks on the interior of the chest plate." "Marks no one will see," Sareth said. "Do it." Marcus worked with borrowed precision tools, his hands steady despite the weight of royal attention. He repositioned the brackets, recalibrated the servos using the armor's own diagnostic interface, surprised to find it used logic similar to Earth computer systems. "The balance will feel different," he warned. "The armor will move with you now instead of restricting you, but it might take time to adjust." Sareth gestured to her attendants. "Help me into it." The armor wasn't just protective gear. It was a symbol, a connection to history, a statement of power. Layer by layer, the pieces came together, until finally Sareth stood fully armored for the first time in months. She raised her arms, extended them fully, rotated her shoulders through complete range of motion, bent, twisted, moved through combat stances that made Marcus step back involuntarily. "It's perfect," she breathed. "For the first time since my coronation, it's actually perfect." She removed the helmet, and fixed Marcus with a look he couldn't interpret. "You did in 3 hours what the finest craftsman in the Empire could not do in months. How?" I think sometimes being an outsider helps, Your Majesty. I don't know what the armor is supposed to feel like, so I only looked at what it was doing wrong. And I've spent my whole life fixing things that other people gave up on."
"Interesting." Sereth turned to Thex.
"I want this human assigned to the royal workshop. Full privileges. He is no longer conscript labor." "Your Majesty," the Master Armorer protested, "he's human. The workshop has standards. He fixed what you could not." Sereth's voice could have cut glass. "Do you wish to challenge my judgment?" The Master Armorer bowed so low his mandibles touched the floor. "No, Your Majesty. Forgive me." Sereth looked back at Marcus. "You came here as a joke, a human given an impossible task to entertain the guards. But you turned a monster into a companion and fixed armor that bore my ancestors to victory." She paused. "I reward competence, human. Serve well, and you will find the Caldrith Empire can be generous to those who prove their worth." Marcus's collar suddenly felt lighter, though it hadn't changed. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Don't thank me yet. The coronation is in 4 days, and I have 17 other pieces of ceremonial equipment that need attention. You have much work ahead." She smiled, and it was terrifying and encouraging in equal measure. "Welcome to the royal service, Marcus Chen. Try not to disappoint me." As Marcus was led away by workshop attendants, Thex remained behind with the Queen. "That was a risk, Your Majesty." "Everything worth doing is a risk, Captain." Sereth ran one claw along the perfect seal of her armor's chest plate. "Besides, did you see his hands? Steady the entire time, even when I threatened to feed him to the war beasts." "I noticed. Humans are supposed to be fragile. Weak. We conscript them for labor because they're expendable." Sereth's voice grew thoughtful. "But that one isn't weak. Frightened, yes. Out of his depth, certainly, but not weak." She paused. "I think we may have underestimated Earth, Captain. Shall I file a report with Imperial Command?" "First, let's see what else our new craftsman can do." Sereth smiled again. "And let's make sure he survives the coronation. I have a feeling we'll need him." 3 days before the coronation, Marcus discovered that royal service meant very little sleep. The workshop never closed, and the list of equipment needing attention seemed to grow every time he checked. Ceremonial weapons, armor pieces for the Queen's honor guard, the mounting bracket for the royal standard, all of it damaged or worn in ways that the Caldrith craftsman had learned to work around rather than fix. "We maintain," Master Artificer Quinn explained, showing Marcus a plasma sword that no longer held a stable edge. "We preserve what the ancestors made. But we rarely improve. Why not?" Marcus studied the sword's power cell, noting the degraded connections. Tradition, pride, fear of changing what worked for our forebears. Quinn's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was amusement. "You humans don't have that problem, do you?" "We break things all the time," Marcus admitted. "Usually by accident, but we get good at fixing them." He repaired the plasma sword by replacing degraded connectors with spares he machined himself. The workshop had equipment that made his hands ache with want. Fabricators that could shape metal at the molecular level, diagnostic tools that showed stress fractures invisible to the eye, power sources that ran on principles he didn't fully understand but could work with through experimentation. "You learn fast," Quinn observed, watching Marcus calibrate the sword's power output. "Most humans who see our technology run in fear, or worship it like magic." "Tools can be understood. Wise father." He was. Marcus's voice caught. His father had died 2 years before the Caldrith arrived, crushed by a machine he'd been trying to repair alone. Marcus had found him and held his hand while they waited for ambulances that came too late. He taught me everything about fixing things, except how to fix people. The Queen's armor was my responsibility. When I couldn't fix it, I felt I had failed her ancestors, her line, everything my position represents. His voice dropped. "You showed me that failure comes from giving up, not from asking for help." "I am grateful, Marcus Chen." That night, Marcus was permitted to return to the beast pits. Skravix, the name he'd learned for the Razorback, had a new harness, properly fitted this time. The creature recognized Marcus immediately, that deep thrumming sound vibrating through the deck plates. "You made a friend," Carrick said. The young guard had been assigned to watch Marcus during his free hours, ostensibly for security, but really, Marcus suspected, because she was curious. War beasts don't usually do that. He was just in pain. Marcus ran his hand along Skravix's armored side, feeling the warmth beneath the scales. Everything acts better when it's not hurting. Is that human wisdom? That's just common sense. Carrick's mandibles clicked definitely amusement this time. You are strange, Marcus Chen, but I begin to understand why the Queen keeps you close. 2 days before the coronation, disaster struck. One of the Queen's honor guard collapsed during practice, his armor's power system overloading and fusing the joints. It took 3 technicians and a plasma cutter to free him. The guard survived, but his armor was ruined, and there were no replacements. The coronation required exactly 12 honor guards, no more, no less. Ancient tradition. Marcus was summoned to the Queen's presence at midnight. Sereth stood in her private chambers, still wearing the repaired ceremonial armor from earlier practice. Sweat glistened on her carapace. Even a queen felt the weight of tradition. Can you build new armor in 2 days? Build? No, Your Majesty. But if I can see the damaged suit, maybe I can repair it. The Master Armorer says it's impossible. The power core melted into the frame. Can I try? Sereth studied him with those compound eyes that saw too much. Why do you want to help, human? You owe the Empire nothing. We took you from your home, forced you into service, gave you to a monster as entertainment. Marcus met her gaze. You also gave me work that matters, Your Majesty. You saw value in me when everyone else saw a joke. And he paused, choosing words carefully. My father always said that doing good work is its own reward. The circumstances don't change that. The armor is in Workshop 7. You have 2 days. Whatever you need, you shall have. The armor was worse than Marcus expected. The power core had indeed melted, fusing components that were never meant to join. The interior padding was charred, the joint servos were slag, and the chest plate had warped from heat. Any reasonable person would have called it scrap. Marcus called it a challenge. He worked through the night, documenting every piece, every connection, every system. The Caldrith craftsmen had built the armor to last centuries, which meant it was over-engineered in beautiful ways. Redundant systems backed up critical functions, load-bearing structures distributed weight across multiple points. Even damaged, the armor wanted to work. It just needed someone to show it how. By dawn, Marcus had a plan. By noon, he had a team. Quinn and 3 master craftsmen who'd overcome their skepticism enough to listen to the humans' ideas. By evening, they'd removed the melted core and begun fabricating replacement components. This won't be original, Quinn warned. The power core is modern fabrication, not ancestral design. It'll work better than original, Marcus countered. The old cores were inefficient. We can triple the output with half the weight. The tradition will be honored by the armor functioning perfectly, not by using ancient technology that's worse techniques. Marcus looked up from the servo he was rebuilding. Sometimes the best way to honor the past is to make sure it has a future. Quinn's mandibles clicked rapidly. Deep amusement. You should write that down. It's almost Caldrith philosophy. 20 hours before the coronation, they powered up the repaired armor. It worked. The servos moved smoothly, the power core ran cool and stable, the joints sealed perfectly. Marcus had even managed to save most of the decorative elements, the etchings and inlays that marked the armor's history. The honor guard who would wear it, Vexer, a veteran who'd served the Queen's mother, tried it on with visible trepidation. He moved through combat forms, testing the balance, the responsiveness, the weight distribution. It feels new, he said finally, but it feels right. High praise, Quinn murmured to Marcus. Vexar has worn the same armor for 30 years. For him to accept a change means you've created something worthy. Marcus was too exhausted to feel proud. He'd been awake for 38 hours, sustained by stimulants that the Caldrith used and that made human hearts race uncomfortably. But the work was done. The coronation could proceed. He was stumbling toward his quarters when Carrick intercepted him. The Queen wants to see you. I look like death. She specified immediately. Sereth waited in the royal armory, surrounded by weapons that had conquered worlds. She'd removed the ceremonial armory and wore simple plates that somehow made her look more dangerous, not less. Marcus Chen, you succeeded again. Thank you, Your Majesty. Vexar tells me his armor is better than it was before the failure. Master Quinn confirms this. You took a disaster and turned it into an improvement. She paused. This is the 3rd time you've exceeded expectations. First with the war beast, then with my armor, now with this. I begin to wonder if humans are wasted as conscript labor. Marcus said nothing. This felt like dangerous ground. "Tomorrow is my coronation," Sareth continued. "I will become queen not in name but in truth, accepted by the council and the people. It is the most important day of my life." She fixed him with that unreadable stare. "I want you there. In the royal box with my advisors and closest retainers. Your Majesty, I'm honored, but that wasn't a request." Her voice softened slightly. "You've earned the right to witness what your work helped create. Besides, if anything goes wrong with the armor or equipment, I want my best problem solver close at hand. I won't let you down." "I know." Sareth turned back to the weapons. "Dismissed. Get some sleep, Marcus Chen. Tomorrow you stand with queens." The coronation began at dawn, as tradition demanded. Marcus stood in the royal box, wearing clothes that the queen's servants had provided. Not Caldrith armor, but something close, a fitted suit that marked him as royal household. Around him, the most powerful beings in the empire gathered to watch their queen ascend. The ceremony was magnificent. Sareth entered the great hall wearing the armor Marcus had repaired, and it caught the light like a promise. Her 12 honor guards flanked her, including Vexar in his rebuilt suit, and they moved with synchronized precision that spoke of years of practice. The royal standard flew on its repaired mounting. The plasma sword Marcus had fixed glowed at Sareth's hip, its edge stable and true. The High Counselor spoke words in ancient Caldrith that Marcus didn't understand, but he felt their weight. This was power changing hands, authority acknowledged, tradition and future meeting in one moment. Then Sareth knelt, and the council placed the crown on her head. The crowd erupted. The sound was deafening. Thousands of Caldrith voices raised in celebration, mandibles clicking in rhythmic patterns that created something like music. Marcus felt it in his chest, felt the weight of the moment, felt the strange pride that came from knowing he'd helped make this possible. Sareth rose as queen, in full, and her first act was to turn toward the royal box. Her eyes found Marcus among the assembled advisors and retainers. She nodded once, a gesture so small that most would miss it. But Marcus understood. He'd proven himself. He'd turned a joke into respect, a death sentence into opportunity. He'd fixed what others declared broken, and in doing so, had fixed something in himself. As the celebration continued, Thex appeared at Marcus's shoulder. "The Queen has decided to offer you a choice," she said quietly. "You may return to Earth when your conscription term ends, with full honors and compensation. Or you may stay, as a master craftsman in the royal household, with all rights and privileges that entails." Marcus looked at the Queen, resplendent in armor he'd repaired. Surrounded by guards he'd helped equip, leading an empire that had taken him as a joke and kept him as an asset. "I don't have to decide now, do I? You have time." Thex's mandibles clicked, amusement. "But I think I know what you'll choose." "Yeah," Marcus said, watching the Queen acknowledge her subjects with grace that belied her lethal capability. "Yeah, I think you do." 3 months later, Marcus stood in the workshop that now bore his name, teaching a class of young Caldrith engineers the principles his father had taught him. Understand the problem. Find the root cause, fix it properly, not just well enough. On his workbench sat a project he was developing, a new harness system for war beasts that would eliminate the pain issues entirely. Skravix waited in Pit 17, well-fed and content, a monster who'd become a companion because someone had bothered to see past the roaring to the pain beneath. The Queen's armor hung in the royal chamber, a symbol of power that worked perfectly because a human had understood that perfection meant meeting the wearer's needs, not maintaining ancient tolerances. And Marcus Chen, who'd been given to a monster as a joke, had become the Empire's most valued craftsman, proving that sometimes the best solutions come from those who see problems differently. Sometimes being broken leads you to the people who need fixing, and sometimes fixing others is how you repair yourself.